everyone. I'm Alexander Haviaras with Eagles and Dragons Publishing. Happy Saturnalia, or as the Romans used to say, Io Saturnalia. From December the 17th to the 23rd, Rome celebrated what was perhaps the greatest and most exciting festival. It was in honor of Saturn, it was a solstice festival, and it celebrated the birthday of the unconquerable sun. In the description below this video, there's a blog post that you can read about all of the traditions that go along with Saturnalia, a lot of which have influenced our Christmas traditions. But today what I wanted to do is read you an excerpt from my book, Saturnalia, A Tale of Wickedness and Redemption in Ancient Rome. I hope you enjoy it. Io Saturnalia, Bacchus yelled, as if in deliberate coordination. Voices far below shouted the same. Cadus stared over the rail of the ship to see the Forum Romanum and a great crowd gathering far below. "What is it?" he asked. "What is happening?" "It is the official start of the festival," Bacchus said solemnly. "It begins with the sacrifice at the temple of Saturn. Look you, for I suspect that you have never seen such a thing." "I cannot see so far distant," Cadus complained. "Then I will show you," Bacchus said, pulling on the rudder of the ship and sending them into a dive which landed them beside the newly unveiled arch of Septimius Severus. Once the ship had set itself down and Bacchus and Cadus were upon land, it disappeared from their sight. God and mortal man moved through the crowd as wraiths until they were at the very front of the throng, and then walked up the vast stairs to the temple. There, before the great doors of the temple, stood an altar of purest black, around which were gathered several priests, all of them with their heads uncovered. "Why do they not wear a fold of their togas over their heads, as is usual?" Cadus asked. "It is the ritus Graecus," Bacchus answered, his voice deep and low as he peered beyond the priests to the inside of the temple. "This is a day of opposites, Cadus Pompilius, therefore they perform the rites uncovered." "And what do they sacrifice?" "Do you know nothing of this day?" Bacchus shook his head, and his long hair danced about his thick shoulders. "A suckling pig is the offering of choice for Saturn. But there is more. Look." Bacchus pointed into the temple interior, and suddenly they were standing beyond the priests in the firelit space before the main altar and statue of Saturn. Outside, the crowd had grown silent and respectful, their heads bowed as they gazed upon the priests who placed a young piglet upon the altar, pouring grains of wheat upon its head before the knife slashed deeply into its neck. There was no squeal, no sound, as the priests went about their work. Then, inside, 3 more priests of Saturn began to unbind great swaths of wool from about the feet of the cult statue. Once the feet were bared, a smaller statue was placed upon a litter, and they carried it upon their shoulders to the pronaos of the temple and out into the sunshine, their feet wading through the small pool of blood about the outer altar. Cadus and Bacchus stood at the doorway looking at the faces of Rome, silent in the one moment, and then exploding into a cheer that splashed like a great wave throughout the Forum Romanum. "Io Saturnalia," they all shouted, including the priests. "Io Saturnalia! Io Saturnalia!" Then the entire populace was packed into the heart of Rome, writhed and wiggled and laughed their way through the long tables that had been set out the length of the forum for the convivium publicum. At the same time, the image of Saturn himself was paraded into their midst to rest upon the stairs of the Senate opposite the temple, to preside over the public feast. "What a waste of public funds," Cadus muttered, and Bacchus turned upon him. "A waste? Why, it is the public who benefits from this very feast, and it pleases Saturn to see them dine and live gloriously as they did in his day." Cadus turned back to look at the temple, and there he thought he spied a black-robed figure with a long staff going back inside. He would have questioned Bacchus about it, but he thought better of it, fearing the utterance of the words that came into his mind at that moment. "The people of Rome are pleased," Bacchus said. "Of course they are. When the Dies Festus declares 3 days of no work while still earning wages, it's ridiculous." "Walk," Bacchus commanded, "and drink." He plunged ahead along the tables of Romans, young and old, foreign and not, as they ate and drank, slave and citizen, side by side. They saw entire families eating together, their children's faces lit by smiles that rarely made an appearance for all the hunger they experienced. Groups of friends huddled and joked and rolled dice. Couples with eyes only for each other luxuriated in a day without work. And those with not a soul to speak with the days of their lives talked and laughed with the strangers beside them at those vast communal tables. "They do seem happy, don't they?" Cadus said, a sliver of jealousy inching its way into his dried-up old heart. "There is more," Bacchus said, touching Cadus's arm. Suddenly, they were in the middle of the markets of Trajan, amid stalls piled high with all manner of foods to be purchased that day by Romans of every station, to be eaten over the 7 days of Saturnalia. There were mountains of nuts, chestnuts, walnuts, almonds, hazelnuts, and more, piled in mounds for all to see, to be eaten, and also gambled with, as was tradition. There were fruits of the season, apples, pears, sanguine oranges from the region around Baiae to the south, and the last of the season's plump and juicy figs. Amphorae of olives and wine from Etruria were popular with those going about their special marketing, as were joints of cured meat, sausages, and more. By far the most popular stalls were those specializing in suckling pigs for Saturnalia, more affordable to most than a whole wild boar, a peacock, or swans favored by the richer citizens of Rome. Garum, the fish sauce that would douse the meat upon any table in Rome, was at the top of every person's shopping list, be it from Iberia or Leptis Magna in Africa proconsularis. And the row of sellers of this Roman favorite were busier now than at any time of year. Cadus watched as Bacchus led him through the maze of the market, moving from food and drink stalls to the textile sellers, where multicolored synthesia were hanging, tempting passers-by with a new set of clothing for the occasion to replace the regular tunic or toga. There were also leather and wool pilae, the conical hats that men wore during Saturnalia, and Cadus noticed that most of the men around them were already wearing them, so many in fact that for a moment he felt as though he were in some faraway foreign market along the Silk Road. They then came to stalls where sigillaria were being sold, those traditional gifts of Saturnalia that were of no great expense, but supremely popular among all classes, and between masters and slaves. Wax cerae were sold in bundles, both thick and thin, of tallow or beeswax. There were writing tablets and dice, knuckle bones, combs, and toothpicks. There were various types of hats and pipes, knives and axes, lamps, balls, and a few particular stalls in one area were busy with sweaty husbands trying to buy perfumes for their wives and mistresses. In another area, toys for children were being sold, dolls, toy horses, balls, wooden swords, and much more to make any child cartwheel or shriek with a joyful "Io!" through the atrium of their domus. And everywhere Bacchus passed, the unseen people burst into song or laughter, their lives lit up by his presence and passing, and the general gaiety of the season. The god enjoyed the effect he had on every person, pointing out the joy that suffused every single Roman on that first day of the festival. As they passed the sellers of holly and ivy, both of which were carefully carried away in great bundles to their homes, or the homes of their masters, Bacchus stopped and stared at Cadus. "What do you think of all this, Cadus Pompilius?" Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that little reading from Saturnalia, A Tale of Wickedness and Redemption in Ancient Rome. If you're interested in the book, it's available in ebook and paperback from all major retailers, bookshops in your public library, or directly from eaglesanddragonspublishing.com. And with that, I will wish you happy holidays and Io Saturnalia. Cheers.